Now, first we will discuss about the lines of latitude. In this, first we will discuss about some of the characteristics of lines of latitude. Then, what are the main lines of latitude on the globe that we draw? We draw a number of imaginary lines, a number of latitudes, but some of them are the important lines and we gave them some name. So how they are important and at what all the degrees they are located, we learn about them. And then at the last we will learn what is the use of these lines of latitude, how we can use these lines of latitude to derive the information about the various places on the earth. So first, as we have discussed, lines of latitudes are the imaginary lines running from east to west and parallel to the equator. And all the places which are located on a particular distance, all the places which are located on a particular latitude towards the north or the south of the equator, these will have the same latitude. All of you must be aware, this is the north hemisphere, this is the south hemisphere. So if I am talking about a particular latitude, all the places which are located on this particular latitude, the value of the latitude will be same for all these points. These places can be in the north hemisphere or south hemisphere, but it will have the same latitude on a particular line. And these lines of latitude are situated or are drawn at an angular distance on both the sides. If we talk about the north hemisphere or the south hemisphere, the lines which are drawn, they are drawn at an angular distance. Here we will measure whatever the distance we will measure, that will be the angular distance, and then we will come to know that how this angular distance can be converted into the kilometers so that we can have the exact idea of the point. But here the lines which are drawn, these are drawn at the angular distance only. So a latitude which is marked here is in degree, with equator being 0 degree. This is the 0 degree. We consider the equator as the 0 degree, and as we will move towards the north pole and towards the south pole, the degree increases. So this way, this is how this angular distance has been taken. And latitudes are calculated according to the angle a place makes with the center of the earth. You see these angular distances, how they are making an angle with the center of the earth. This is the center, this angular distance. This is the center, this angular distance. This is the center, this angular distance. So this is the way we are going to measure the angular distances. And these angular distances for the latitudes. And because the lines of latitudes are parallel to the equator and they are also parallel to each other, they are called parallels of latitude. These are also known as parallels of latitude. Why do we call them so? Because they are parallel to the equator and the lines are also parallel to each other. What is the next important thing? That each parallel of latitude is a full circle. And the equator, this equator is known as the great circle. We can clearly view this thing on the globe. There we can see that whatever the latitudes are drawn, these all latitudes makes one complete circle, and as we can see, as we will move away from the equator, either in the north hemisphere or in the either in the northern hemisphere or in the southern hemisphere, the value of the circle will decrease. So that's why the equator means, if we will consider the distance of this line, if we will take the length of the circle which makes the equator, it will be the greatest line. So that's why the equator is known as the great circle. Now the next thing is that the lines of latitude are not of equal length, as we just discussed. This is the great circle, and as we move at an angular distance, as the angle will increase, the length will decrease. So as we will move away from the equator, the length of the lines of latitude will decrease. It will not be the same, and it started becomes smaller as we move towards the poles. At an angle of 60-degree latitudes in each hemisphere, the length of the circle is half the length of the equator. Suppose if this is the 60 degree, then the length of this circle is half of the length of the great circle, and this is the case in both the hemisphere, in the northern hemisphere and in the southern hemisphere. And at the poles, if we talk about the north pole and the south pole, the line of latitude which is here, it is just a point. It is not a circle, but it is simply a point only. So these are some of the main features of lines of latitude, that they are parallel to each other. They are parallel to the equator. The equator is the great circle, and because these lines are parallel to each other and parallel to the equator, the lines of latitude are also known as the parallels of latitude. These lines of latitude are drawn at an angular distance from each other in the both hemispheres, starting from the equator at 0 degree. And as we will move away from the equator towards the pole, the degree will increase. But the length of the circle that each line of latitude is making will decrease. And how do we take this angular distance? For each point, we take the angular distance from the center of the earth. This gives you the angular distance for a particular latitude. At the 60 degree, the value of the circle will be half of the great circle, and at the north pole and the south pole, it will be only a dot or a point and not any line of circle.